gentlemen, what the world has been waiting for, what the world needs now, the one, the only, amazing, original, Johnny Blaze. Often imitated, but never duplicated. There's Johnny.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to the original Johnny Blaze Show. It's always great to be here as I blaze right in with my karate kick. Let's have a blazing hot fun time. A wife was yelling at her husband, "You men are all alike. You only want one thing from a woman." "That's not true," the husband said. "We actually want two things, peace and quiet." Two divorced women were talking at the bar. "Why did you leave him?" the first one asked. "Because he became 100% impotent." "That's nothing," she replied. "Mine became 300% impotent." "How did this happen?" the other woman asked. "Well, first he burned his tongue, and then he developed arthritis in both hands." A man's wife was dying at the hospital. He sat by the bed and she began to speak. "I'm sorry, honey, but during our marriage, I was often unfaithful." "I forgive you," the husband said. The wife continued. "I also stole money out of our children's trust fund, and then I turned them against you." "I still forgive you," the husband said. "Now it's time for me to confess. I'm the one who poisoned your dinner last night." After 20 years of marriage, a husband and wife decided it was time for a change. "Let's try a new position," the husband said. "Okay," the wife replied. "This time you clean my underpants all night while I sit on the couch guzzling my beer." I'll never forget the day I finally found Miss Wright. I just didn't realize her first name was always. My girlfriend once told me she needed more space, so I dropped her off at the park and told her to run around for a while. "I'll be back to pick you up in the morning." The road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. We have a blazing hot fun show with a special guest. He is a multi-talented singer and songwriter. Please give a big warm welcome and say hello to Alan CHAPELL.
Hey there.
Welcome to the amazing original Johnny Blaze Show.
Well, thank you for having me, Johnny. How are you?
Real good, thanks. It's an honor and a privilege, Alan. My pleasure. Everybody has a very, they have unique lives, and I'm sure that you have a most unique and a very exciting life. Please give me a rundown. Tell me about the Alan CHAPELL story. How did you get started in entertainment, and where are you from?
Well, I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, and I started playing the trumpet at 5 and the piano at maybe 6, and just music has always just sort of been something that I do. And I was very fortunate at a young age. I ended up hooking up with a guy named Jimmy Einer, who was probably best known these days for his work on the Dirty Dancing movies. But Jimmy had agreed to produce an EP I was putting together when I was 14 or 15, and so I've been doing music forever. More recently, I've been playing a whole bunch of shows and recorded albums and doing the music thing that everybody else is doing, but just absolutely love music.
How did you meet Jimmy? I mean, sounds like that was very fortunate for you to meet him.
Yeah, it was really fortunate. So Jimmy's son and I hit it off. We played Jimmy Jr. played drums in my high school band, and the Einers were very good to me. I have a lot of fond memories. I haven't talked to any of them in a number of years now, but boy, they were really kind.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Did you teach yourself these instruments, or did you go to school?
Oh, no, I had a bunch of just wonderful teachers. So on trumpet, a guy named Dave Rudolph, who taught in the Stanford school system for a number of years, and he was just wonderful. And then a guy named Ogden Booker, who taught me classical piano anyway. And really everything that I learned about music theory, I learned from Ogden. He was just a wonderful, wonderful mentor.
Wonderful. What about your singing now? Did you teach yourself, or did you also take lessons?
No, that's an interesting story. I'd been singing my entire life, but it's about 7 or 8 years ago. a guy named Jerry Harrison turned me on to Don Lawrence, and who is a vocal instructor in New York City. And Don literally changed my life. I've been working with him for a number of years, and it's just my voice is now, I feel like, gone into to the point where it's a real asset in terms of the show, and that has everything to do with Don. He is an absolutely wonderful teacher.
What is there about him that makes him so wonderful, this teacher that changed your life?
I wish I could explain it. So for one thing, I mean, he works with some top tier people, and he's been doing this his whole life. But I think there's something about Don that he just sort of wills you to be a better singer. It's almost like that, that football coach who somehow magically is able to inspire his players to rally and to win the big game. Well, every time I sing, it's a big game, and Don is there. Even though I haven't seen him in a couple of years, Don is there, just sort of willing me to be the singer that I always hoped I'd be.
So it sounds like he's championing you, and he's encouraging you, and he's giving you great lessons. I mean, probably breathing and vocal, power and everything, holding notes and the proper breathing techniques.
Completely. And here's what I would say about that. So I've taken other people's classes, and I've done all of the work, but there's something about the exercises that Don gives you and the inspiration that he gives you and his insistence that you do things a certain way that, for me at least, have had an absolutely meaningful impact into my ability to sing.
So you would say that it really improved you as a singer, your vocal quality, your power, to be able to hold notes and how to breathe properly, and how to have confidence when you're not only taking lessons, but when you actually do your performances.
Yeah, Don somehow figured out how to get me to sing like me. And I know that sounds very simple, but that's really what he did.
We just said be yourself, basically. So I was like, yeah, that's the best way. Be yourself, Alan. What kind of a voice do you have? Do you have a tenor voice, or is it bass or baritone? Or
no, I'm probably somewhere in between a baritone and a tenor. I don't have a super high voice, but I can get up there with falsetto a little bit. And I think one of the things that Don has taught me is to sing like I talk, and just to have the whole thing be a nice conversation. And so I'm grateful that for his friendship and his mentorship.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad that worked out for you. It sounds like it's really inspired confidence in you. It's given you a feeling of that you can. I guess you can do anything you want to when you put your mind to it.
Well, yeah, I've been very fortunate in that I've had a number of people like Don and like Jimmy Einer and like Jerry Harrison, who have been really, really instrumental in helping me in my life.
That's wonderful. So, you work with any top celebrities at all? Have you opened for any top celebrities in your performances, or worked with them?
Well, I've done a number of shows, particularly over the last 6 months, with the band Gin Blossoms, and they've been a lot of fun to play shows with. They're just a wonderful band and great guys, and I grew up as a fan of their music, so it's just wonderful to be able to play shows with them. I would say the same thing I've done a couple of shows over the years with Everclear and Lisa Loeb and Little River Band and Jacko Pierce and the Average White Band. And so, yeah, I've been fortunate to do a bunch of those things. And as an independent artist, it's absolutely wonderful to be able to go into a room of, 400, 500, 800 people, and to be able to get an audience that at the beginning of the night, nobody knows who you are, but at the end of the night, they're singing along to the songs, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
So it sounds like you have a lot of audience participation in your shows.
I try to, yeah, particularly when I do solo shows, because if it's just you and the piano and your voice, you want to try to get the crowd into some stuff, and fortunately, I've been able to do that.
How are you able to do that effectively to make it successful, then, to get the audience involved in the participation?
Sometimes it's just as simple as asking them. If you don't ask them on the first song, you just you do your thing and you tell your stories, and earnestness goes a long way with people. and people want to just have a good time, and they want to root for you if they like you. And so I've been pretty fortunate in that regard. And so I'll usually just say, hey, look, here's the chorus. The chorus is waiting, waiting, and people will and we'll practice it a couple of times before I start the song, and then we'll dive in, and wouldn't you know it, people are singing along.
So that's great. So you do a solo performance, or you have any times with a band?
Well, so in COVID times, it's been a little more difficult getting the full band together. And some of that's just that I moved out to the West Coast, where my band is really mostly East Coast. But we're, so I've been doing mostly solo shows over the last year and a half or so. And those have been a lot of fun. And the good thing about the solo shows is that you're able to create a level of intimacy with an audience that I think it's harder to do with the big band behind you. But, that said, boy, there's nothing like the power of a really good band. And I've got a 5-piece. I play keys, and I've got bass, drums, guitar, and a violin player. And my violin player is in my view, at least, the absolute best rock and roll violin player that over the last decade or so.
So you have a 5-piece band? Is what you have?
Yeah.
And they play, it's bass, it's guitar, lead guitar, bass, drums. What other kind of music?
Yeah, and then I've got a violin player too.
Violin.
So yeah, and the violin is kind of a neat thing because she, some of the songs she'll be a traditional violin. Sometimes it's almost like she's the lead guitarist. Sometimes she's playing almost synth lines, and Lorenza is super talented and just a blast to work with. Really,
what's the name of the band, and how did you meet your band members?
Well, you just meet people along the way in New York City. I mean, I've been a musician there on and off for 20-something years, and so I met Ann Klein, my guitarist, at Craigslist, and then little by little you start meeting some other people, and you might lose your bass player, and then I think Lorenza suggested we bring in Malcolm Gold, and I'm glad we did, because Malcolm is just super talented.
I see. Well, it's great that when I guess whether you're doing a solo act or you're with a band, you feed off the energy of the audience.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to.
People get involved, and people are clapping and applauding, and they're giving you hopefully standing ovations, and they're just cheering, and they're really loving it. Have you ever had a performance now that you tried your darnest to make it work, and for some reason, no matter how hard you tried, things didn't work? And if you did, how did you handle it?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate, over the last couple of years that hasn't really happened. I think that the one thing that did happen is that when you open for somebody else, sometimes you don't get the dressing room, and it was a very cold day, and we were backstage, and I remember my fingers were really cold. And it took me a couple of songs to get super comfortable because my fingers were just absolutely frozen, and it's a little hard to play like that. But the thing is like, once you recognize that even if they don't like you, it's going to be okay, then none of that other stuff really matters if it didn't go over well.
So how do you handle any like anxiety before you get ready to do your shows? What's involved in the preparation? How do you deal with any performance anxiety? And give me a rundown about all what goes on.
Yeah, I don't know that I have. At this point, I've been playing for so long that I don't know that I have so much performance anxiety. What I do have before I go on is you kind of have an hour to kill, and I never really know what to do with that time. It's not like I can meditate, and so you end up kind of just pacing around the dressing room and with my band there, driving them all crazy, because it's like you're just sort of a ball of energy. But I don't really get nervous anymore because, again, I've just sort of accepted the fact that I'm not for everybody, but I make good music, and most people, even if it's not their style, will appreciate, because they get good music is good music regardless of the style.
Have you ever had to deal with in your career at all with any rejection? And if you did, how did you deal with that?
Oh, well, if
Everything
you're in
always gone
music,
smoothly.
if you're in music, you get rejection all the time. I get told, I'm not right for this thing or that, but that's just the nature of the thing. Music is this thing that's just, incredibly subjective. But I would say this. So, I did a show a couple of years ago in New Jersey, opening for a band called Iron Butterfly, which I was super excited to play with them because um, I'm a huge fan, and this is an iconic band. But I would say that me as a solo pianist playing in front of Iron Butterfly might not be an obvious choice. And I would say that there were a couple of people in the audience who, they weren't, they didn't necessarily want to sign my mailing list, but there was an appreciation of what I did, even though what I'm doing was very different than, well, what Iron Butterfly does.
So how would you say, what was the difference in your performance in comparison to Iron Butterfly? What was the difference?
Well, the difference is that I'm playing piano and these guys invented heavy metal, and so it's just a stylistic thing. But the cool thing about Iron Butterfly, and I will confess to only being familiar with a couple of their songs going in, but these guys had some fantastic grooves in what they were doing. It's really great when you can see something like this and you leave a bigger fan of the people that you're playing with than when you came in.
I see. So would you say that you say that they inspired yours? Is there anybody in particular? Well, you told me your singing teacher, but I mean, as far as singers or performers, anybody in particular that's thoroughly inspired you, that motivated you and made you say, "Oh, I'd like to be like." I mean, you like to be yourself. That's the best way, but they really motivated and inspired you. Any of these?
There's a whole bunch. I mean, Art from Everclear is just a wonderful performer. The guys in Gin Blossoms are just wonderful. But if I had to pick a couple of people, I would say, Jonathan Richman, who was in a band called the Modern Lovers back in the day, but has been touring solo for the last 20 or 30 years. And Jonathan is absolutely brilliant. He writes great songs. He is quirky as all heck. And I love his live show. I've probably seen him, a dozen times over the years, and absolutely, I find him inspirational. I like Jeff over at Wilco. I've seen Wilco a bunch of times over the years. There's no shortage of great music out there that one can be inspired by. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'm also inspired by Jerry Harrison, who has produced an album of mine a number of years ago and has become a really good friend. And Jerry was in a band called the Talking Heads, and before that, he was in the Modern Lovers with Jonathan. But Jerry inspires me, not just because of his musical acumen, although that goes without saying. I mean, heck, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all. But Jerry inspires me because he's just so smart and so cerebral. And he's one of those guys that I sometimes jokingly call him the Wizard of Oz, because he's one of those guys that can look at somebody else and figure out how to make them better and figure out how to get the best out of them. And that's a gift.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that story. It's very interesting, Alan. What kind of music would you say that you like, and also you prefer in your favorite types of music? I mean, you like rock, you like popular, jazz, folk, country, classical?
I would say all of the above.
Blues. Yeah.
It really depends on my mood. But when you say jazz, I would just start with, my dad is he's now in his late 80s, but he's a bebop saxophone player. And I loved playing that stuff with him. I grew up, and that's something that we were able to bond over. And so I have a huge love of jazz. But my roots, the thing that really turns me on is rock and roll, and in all of its forms. I love singer-songwriters, particularly those who are able to move seamlessly across multiple genres. Beck, David Byrne, folks, Elvis Costello, even Billy Joel, and people who are able to, who have decided that what they do is bigger than any genre that they might happen to sing in, and that stuff.
How about the Beatles, the Beach Boys, groups like that, Stones, and some of these
Yeah.
British groups in the past?
Oh, I love me some Beatles. I mean, I a couple of months ago watched watched the Get Back documentary, and I'll tell you, it was just so wonderful just watching that creative process. In part because as a musician, I'm probably more on the Paul McCartney side, where I'm kind of tapping my feet, going, "Okay, guys, let's get it done. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, let's work." But I can see the other side of it, where the rest of them are just so right-brained at times that you just have to let the musical thing come to you. But boy, it doesn't get better than the Beatles.
Well, the Beatles were great. It's never going to be a group like that again.
Yeah.
British Invasion. Oh yeah. Beach Boys too in their day. Excellent.
Oh, Brian Wilson and really the whole group of them. They, were absolutely, absolutely wonderful, wonderful artists.
And he had many other groups too. Besides the Beards, Peter and Gordon. What's the name of the other group? Paul Revere and the Raiders, the Dave Clark Five. I mean, it goes on and on. There's so many other groups.
Yeah, there's just so many wonderful bands, and I lived in Brooklyn, New York for a while. Most of my time I spent in the West Village in New York City, but there was a brief period in the mid 2000s where I thought that the most interesting music was coming out of a certain section of Brooklyn. And it was just wonderful to be able to experience that, because there was a brief period where, everywhere you went had a little mini live music venue, and most of the bands you heard were at least good and interesting, and some of them were great.
That's great. What places have you performed? What are your many places you've traveled and you performed, and what were your most favorite venue of those performances?
Well, the first place that comes to mind was the House of Blues in Orlando, which I opened up for the Gin Blossoms a few weeks ago, and that was just an absolute blast. It was just such an energy-filled room, and it's interesting because sometimes that was definitely more of a energetic crowd, where sometimes I'll play these old theaters like the Bristol in Virginia or the Greenwich Odeum in Rhode Island, where they're just there to listen to the music and really, really embrace it. So it isn't so much the energy that you get at the House of Blues, but it has its own thing, because people there are really just, they're so appreciative of what you're doing. And, both those theaters come to mind as just being wonderful places. And, I've done the Hard Rock in Nicaragua. I've done, a couple of places in Europe, and then, the Belly Up down in San Diego is a blast too. It's sort of like the House of Blues in that it's really an energy room.
I think you did. Didn't you do a performance something in India? I think, or something growing up. I think.
Yeah, back in the mid '90s, I lived in Mumbai and played with a band called Kalki, who they had been invited on the Peter Gabriel World of Music and Dance tour the previous year, and we wrote a whole bunch of songs together and got them signed on to BMG, or one of the divisions of BMG, Crescendo. And Indian music, the rhythms are just, that was a pretty wonderful scene.
What is there about that, the Indian music, that really appeals to you and stands out?
Well, it's just that the everything is danceable, even when sometimes it isn't even simple, but it's still like the dance grooves that they put out there are just wonderful.
Great. So, would you say that your performances, can you give me any? Do you have any stories, like any humorous stories, any stories that stand out of any of your performances? You'll never forget. I mean, they were just unforgettable.
Well, here's one. So I had this band in college, and this was in the early '90s, And some promoter saw us play, and he said, "You know what? You guys have to come play this brand new theater that I'm putting up together somewhere in Massachusetts." And so we, he said, "Well, I'll pay you a lot of money, and I'll give you a case of beer, and we'll put you in a hotel." And so we took him up on his offer, and we went up there, and he was right. The theater was absolutely beautiful, and we had just finished sound check, and and then the promoter came to us and said, "Hey, I've got some bad news. We don't have any money. We got robbed." And you never know with a promoter if they're telling you the truth, but I'm just saying that that's what he told us. But he told us that after we had already put all of our equipment in the theater. And so now we kind of felt like, well, we got to play. So we decided, we didn't think it was going to be a full house. We didn't think it was going to be a big show. We thought it would be an empty theater. So as a little bit of an FU to the promoter, we decided to come out for the show in our underwear.
Your underwear?
And we probably should have checked the front of house before we did that, because literally they opened up the curtain. There were 500 people in the audience, and you had 4 jerks standing in their underwear. So we ended up playing the whole show in our underwear.
That's kind of embarrassing, but that's unforgettable.
Yeah. Well, the people.
How do the people? Well, how do they react to that?
It's funny. Once you own it, people were into it. It was almost like a Chili Peppers thing, right?
Wow. So maybe you can start a little fad then. Under the entertaining underpants song or something.
Yeah. It was good.
In other words, what you're doing is you're turning your scars into stars. You're not letting that defeat you. You're trying to be creative and trying to go with it.
Yeah.
So that's probably usually it happens too. Like when things don't go out just right, I think usually a lot of performers they just act like nothing happened at all and move on. They don't make a big fuss about it.
Well, I learned that. I talked about this a little bit when we first got started. So my grandmother, who is a devoutly religious woman, and was very close to me, and she was the one that encouraged me to play my first concert when I was 5. And when you're 5, you don't realize that everything you do is kind of adorable. I was nervous. I told my grandmother, I said, "Listen, what if they don't like me? What if this doesn't go well?" And my grandmother smiled, and she put her arm around me, and she told me something that I remember to this day. She said, "Alan, a little humiliation is good for the soul."
Really?
And that might be the best advice I've ever gotten, because what she could have said is, "Oh, don't worry, they're going to love you."
Well,
but that's not what you need to hear.
Why do you think she said something like that? Humiliation is good for the soul.
Well, I think that was a little bit of her Irish Catholic humor coming through. But really what I took that to mean is that there's nothing that this audience can do to you. They don't own who you are. No audience does. You own who you are. And even if you make a fool out of yourself in front of this audience, you're going to come out a better person. And I've taken that, throughout my playing days, where that's why, walking out in front of 500 people in your underwear is not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, you got basically, I guess you just get into what you're doing. You don't worry about the results. You're not going to please everybody. Nobody pleases everyone. Like I always said, Ricky Nelson, the garden party, if you can't please everybody, please yourself, and you're not able to please. It's impossible. But some of the greatest entertainers who were successful had people that didn't care for them. It doesn't matter. They had more people that loved them to make up for those that hated them.
Yeah.
So, I guess you just have a good time, love what you're doing, put your mind, body, heart, and soul into it. It sounds like that's what you do. And picture yourself doing well. If you're nervous, I guess picture the audience as naked. So you're the one in charge. You're the one that's doing all the entertainment. I mean, if you don't do it, then who's going to do it? You're in charge of that.
Yeah, I think I just go out there and I do my thing, and I know now that more often than not that's going to be more than good enough, and you just have a good time with it.
So you've never in all your experiences have always been positive. You never had a performance that stands out that was the worst performance. And if you did, what could you?
Well,
what would you
yeah.
do?
So I remember I was actually playing a show in junior high. I played a talent show at the Stanford Catholic High School, and I had never sang, or I hadn't sang in years, and I hadn't sang rock and roll, and I didn't know the words to the song "Message in a Bottle," which is by the Police, and the song is rather high. And I got up there and I started singing, and puberty had kicked in right at that very moment. And so my voice started cracking and the audience started laughing. And, that was a little embarrassing, and not so much just for that particular moment, but then, going and seeing people backstage after that was a little embarrassing. But you know what? You learn from it, and you go through it. There's kind of a funny aside to that show, though, because there was another rock and roll musician at that talent show. He ended up playing with a band called the Blues Traveler, the singer, and he was not singing that day, but he was acting as a comedian. And the joke inside, because I remember seeing him afterwards, was like, he came up to me and he said, "Boy, you got more laughs than I did."
I see. So yeah, he's the comedian, and you're the singer and entertainer and performer, and you're not trying to be funny, but you are funny.
But it happened. But John Popper at Blues Traveler has done pretty well for himself. So he gave up the comedy and one heck of a musician.
I see. There's a famous comedian too, but the same as a Dave CHAPELL.
Yeah.
That's a common name, so I don't know if there's any relation between the comedian and yourself.
No, I haven't met Dave. The funny thing about Dave is that if you Google Chappelle, you have to go about 30 pages before you find Alan Chappelle. Because everything else is there. Regardless of how you spell it, Google seems to really like Dave. That's okay. I like Dave. I'm a big fan.
You are. Well, your name has got a hip sound to it. Your last name, Chappelle. It does.
Well, it's a little bit of a French thing, right? Gives a little bit of a cool French vibe.
That's cool. I think that's cool and awesome. Right. Huh. Now you're. I know that you also, besides being an entertainer and singer, well, you also write songs too. You've been a lawyer too. Tell me about the kind of lawyer that you were.
Well, yeah. So what happened is I came back from India in the mid '90s, and I thought that I'd have to get a real job. And so I went to law school and I studied human rights law and European Union law. And at the same time, I started working at what they used to call a new media company. I was with this company called Jupiter Research, which was, now you'd call it an internet company. And I got involved with all of these tech companies. And over the last number of years, I advise companies on consumer privacy stuff. What data can they collect? What can they do with it? That kinds of thing. And it's been nice. It's been a lot of fun.
So you're a privacy lawyer then, right?
I am.
People's privacy. You do deal with their law. I guess the laws on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun space because it's changing all the time.
So that supported it sounds like that supported you, what you really wanted to do, be a singer and songwriter, entertainer.
Well, I don't know. I think I am a singer, songwriter, entertainer. I just happen to, there's not many singer, songwriter, entertainers who are able to make a living, and so I'm able to do that and do a little of both and have a lot of fun with both of them.
That's great. What's a typical day now as a singer and songwriter? Tell me about things that go on, and also how you go about creating hit songs, and what's the whole process for when you do your performances? What's
Well, yeah, it really is. You kind of have to always be writing, and you have to always be playing. And I've got a piano here in the houseboat that I live in, and I've got a keyboard downstairs in the houseboat, and I'm always playing one of them. And so what happens is, when you play, all of a sudden, chords come into your head, and then notes come into your head, and sometimes when that happens, a song starts to develop, and I've got my phone with me all the time, and I can just record little ideas, and sometimes they go somewhere, sometimes they don't, but it works as a process. And then once you're able to bang out all of the chords and have some melody, then I wander around the neighborhood in the West Village or in Sausalito or really wherever I am, and eventually words come up, and once that happens, then I start crafting all of the parts on a little Mac program called GarageBand, and I'll write the bass, drums, and guitar and the whole thing, and then I send it off to my band, and we work on it, and then record. And we've done, with this band, we've done 6 albums, and we've got another double album coming out, hopefully in the next 6 months or so.
That's great. You've had quite a few streams, I think, in some of your songs, right?
Yeah. We're into a couple of million, so we're not up to the Beatles yet, but we're getting there.
Oh, I see. It's a work in progress. What now you write mainly more original songs, or do you do cover, or do both, or?
Well, when I do the solo shows, I'll occasionally do a cover. I've done a song by the Psychedelic Furs that goes over really well, and I played around with some other things, but most of the time I try to do my own stuff.
And do you prefer more fast type of songs, or more relaxing, slow songs, or does you like to do both?
I try to have a little bit of a variety. I try to get bounce around different genres. There's definitely some things that are slower, but you got to be careful, if particularly as a solo, as a performer, if it's everything is slow or everything is fast, then the audience tends to get a little bored with stuff, and so.
They say variety is the spice of life, so you like a little everything.
I like me some variety, yeah.
That's great. That really is. Yeah, that's really something.
And then, when you say, the Dave Chappelle thing, one of the things that I've done to combat some of the name confusion is there's a song on my first album called Giving Her More, and I will often play that, particularly when I do a solo show. And then I'll tell the audience that if they want to find out more about me, rather than arm wrestle with the Google or Spotify algorithm regarding how one spells Chappelle, if you just go to givinghermore.com, you can at least find all my socials and all the places where you can get my music, and it's sort of one place where it just automatically takes you to. And people seem to be able to get their head around that. And, even if in the audience, you can get people to type in givinghermore.com, and then they visit it, and next thing you know, I've got a couple of extra fans.
That's great. That really is great. Now, there was something, I was listening to a podcast, there's something about, I think on a riverboat or something, there was a performance, or kayaking, or riverboat. Describe all about that. Tell me all about that performance.
Oh, so yeah, I live in the houseboat community of Sausalito, California, and there's 400 or 500 houseboats here in one little area, kind of on the northern tip of Sausalito in Marin County, just north over the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. And Sausalito is a wonderful place, but its claim to fame, I think, over the last couple of years, is it is the only place that I know of that has had continuous live music events through the pandemic. And the reason they've been able to do this is that they will people will host on their dock or on their houseboat or even on what they call an anchor out, where there's boats out kind of in the bay here in Richardson Bay, and 100 different kayaks, boats, rafts, all kinds of watercraft will come up, and you'll play to 100 people but they're all socially distanced because they're all in separate boats. And it's a lot of fun. I've done a couple of those, and now that it's getting warmer, I'll probably do another one in the next month or two.
Well, that sounds like quite an experience. And not only you, but for all the audience also.
Yeah, no, I've gone to a bunch of them too, and there's some great musicians out here, and it's just a lot of fun.
That's wonderful. That's really great. So you're versatile and talented. It sounds like you've done quite a few things. Now, if you'd like to sing any songs, I know you have there's many songs. If you want to sing any songs on the show, feel free.
Well, I'm not really ready to do that. I've got a 2-year-old who is sleeping in the next room, and so.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to disturb your child, that's for sure.
Yeah. So it's fun with her most mornings now. She gets up at the crack of dawn like all little babies do, and all she wants to do, particularly on the weekends, is have me play the piano, and she'll sing and dance along, and it's just a lot of fun.
That's great. So you practice quite a bit then, it sounds like, on your piano and your singing and your performing. You do a lot of practicing?
Yeah, well, I just like to play.
Well, may as well do something that you love. You only live once.
Absolutely.
Instead of being forced to do things that you don't want to do. So you're very fortunate that you have the talents and you do have the ability, and you are doing it. You're making a living at it. You're bringing out albums. You're traveling all over. You're creating great music, and you're adding all kinds of enjoyment and entertainment to your audience, and you're loving it yourself.
We're having a good time, yeah, and we try to hopefully that becomes contagious, where the audience, everybody wants to belong to something. Everybody wants to have something that they go to, whether that's a church or a yoga or I don't know, a bridge club, or but people want to belong to something. It's sort of a part of human nature, and maybe even more so now, given what we've been through over the last couple of years. And you really want to try to provide that for people.
Well, it sounds like you're doing it. You're definitely doing it, Alan.
Well, thanks. Well, just keep trying. That's all you can do, right?
Well, yeah, we're trying, very trying. No, you're doing it. Yeah, no, you're doing it. You're definitely doing it. That's for sure. What's the most challenging? What's your most favorite performance you've ever had, and your most challenging one that you've ever had out of all the shows that you've done, where it was a challenge, but you were able to do it? And what stood out?
Well, I think that both the most challenging and my favorite are probably the next one I'm going to do, right? I mean, it's just, you can always kind of convince yourself that this one is different, that this one is a bigger challenge. And as I go out there and play, I try not to do the same set, even if I'm playing a new place. I just try to, do things a little bit differently. So you always want to, I've now got a catalog of 150 songs, and so you want to try to bring different things into each concert, or you want to share an intimate story, and you want to go out on the ledge a little bit with some of that stuff, because you don't always know where you're going to land once you start one of these stories, but that's sort of the excitement of it.
That's great. What would you say that there's about you that makes you so unique and different in comparison to other singers and entertainers?
Well, I don't know about that. I can only say that, I do my thing, and it's, people seem to like it. And, but I think the thing that makes me unique is that I recognize that I'm unique, and I'm just not trying to be something that I'm not.
What is there about it that makes you feel that you are unique? How do you feel that you stand out, that you're unique? You're not just like anyone. You might be you're being yourself, of course. That's the best way. But
yeah, I feel like I try to bring in a little bit of a unique point of view in each song, and I try to be a little bit maybe a little sneaky about it and how it goes. I'll start a song about my friend Lenny, who is a bit of a barfly, an older man, and I'll tell the story about that. It's a song called Reaction. I call it the drinking song, but it isn't really about Lenny. It's about it's about the cultural situation that develops within a dive bar, and you try those little misdirects with people. You try to come up with something that people can relate to, and there's other people who've done that too, but I try to put my own little spin on it.
I see. You put your own. I see your own style and personality on it to make it your own.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, you have had and continue to have, Alan Chappell, a very exciting and inspiring life, and you're fortunate to be able to do something that you love to doing. You're singing, songwriting, performing in person, and even being a lawyer also.
Yeah, I feel pretty lucky. Things are all right.
That's really great. That's really great, Alan. I think that's wonderful. If you had to do anything over again now in your life, is there anything that you might think that you might do differently if you started over again in your career and your life?
Boy, it's so hard. Like I don't know. I might, I think that I think that 10, 15, 20 years ago, I probably was a little bit more thinking about what other people liked or what other people saw in me, and sometimes when you do that, you risk losing yourself a little bit. And so, I would play with bands that maybe weren't right, because they had this point of view and I had my own point of view, but I was like, well, maybe they're right and I should just do what they're doing. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that you just got to be yourself. But it takes a while to get there.
I see. Just like the song, I gotta be me. I gotta be me. What else can I be but what I am?
Yeah.
That's right. That's the best way. Put your own spin on it and do your own thing and be yourself.
Well, that's the goal anyway.
Some people just try to be something that they're not. They're really not.
Well, yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the thing of like, well, these other people say I should be X.
So in retrospect, if you had to do anything over again in your life or career, would you say you're really happy, content, a happy camper, or you might have done something different if you start over again and, if you had to do it over again?
That's the thing. Like, there's definitely things I would have done over again, but I could have done things better and ended up in a worse place. I mean, you never really know with life, do you?
No, you never know. That's true. Yeah.
I'm pretty happy where I am. I feel pretty content. I've got the love of a great woman. I've got a beautiful baby. I've got another daughter, and
Great. So what is your now? How did you and your wife meet, and what does your wife do?
Well, we met in New York City, and she works at one of the big consulting firms, and she's originally from Nicaragua, and she's absolutely wonderful and the love of my life, and in many respects my muse.
So she's supportive of you, and
well, of course, yeah. Well, and I'm supportive of her.
It works both ways. That's right. Give and take in relationships. So that's great. That's working out. And you have a child. How many kids do you have? One or two?
I've got my daughter Rose, who is just over 2, and I've got my daughter Kylie, who's in her 20s, and living out in the Pacific Northwest.
And your daughter Kylie, what does she do? She's 20. Does she work? Or?
Oh, she's a mechanical engineer. She went to school in Washington D.C. and is now living up somewhere in Seattle.
Okay, well, I'm sure you're proud of her.
Oh, of course.
That's wonderful. You have a wonderful family, great family. Then that's great. Okay. Do you have any, Alan? Do you have any present projects right now that you're working on?
Well, I like I said, I've got a double album that's coming out sometime in the next 4 to 6 months, and we've been working on that. We started working on that a little over a year ago, and if you remember, a little over a year ago, firstly, you were still mostly on lockdown, And
Right.
so it was difficult to get into a rehearsal studio, let alone a recording studio. And so I ended up doing all of my sessions from here and working with my band who were playing in Brooklyn, and it worked really, really well. I didn't think it was gonna, because you want to be in the same room, and I kind of missed the fun and the vibe of it. But the cool thing about working things that way was that I would pipe in my vocals so that they would have those, and I would just sort of listen along as the whole band's playing, and they'd listen to my previously recorded vocals. So I was no longer a performer, and I could switch over and be a producer. And it was really helpful, because if you're not performing, you're really listening. And anyway, I think this next album is going to be our best and our
So
most.
you got six. This is your sixth album that's coming out.
Well, so Two Fishes is the album that's coming out very soon, and then on its heels is going to be another album that I haven't titled yet, but it'll be at least a double album. And we did like 26 songs, so
Wow.
yeah, it's there was a lot of material.
That's it sounds like it. And where did you get the title Two Fishes? That's something you just came up with, or is it something based upon anything?
Yeah, Two Fishes was also the title track of the album. And the two fishes are my daughter Rose, who's 2, and my daughter Kylie, who's in her 20s. And
well, that's really nice.
The juxtaposition of their respective lives, not only with respect to like where I was and what I was going through, but also if you really think about it, I mean, Rose is a COVID baby, and Kylie was a 9/11 baby.
Oh, I see.
And so that's very, very different perspectives of the world, and those events are going to impact who they are for the rest of their lives.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that with myself and our audience. Alan, yes. Now you had some other songs. There's some different songs I heard on the back. There's on podcasts like "Ride," "Before You Break," "I'm Coming Over," and "Grow Old with Me." Tell me about those, the creations of those songs.
Well,
they're kind of catchy. They're catchy.
Well, thanks. Yeah, "Ride" I wrote out here in Sausalito, and it was on my 4th album, Penultimate. And that song's got a bunch of streams, and it goes. I still play it as a live, even as a solo player, and it's gone over great. "Grow Old with Me" is kind of a fun one. It's brand new, and we haven't recorded it yet, but it's really more of a solo thing anyway. It's just me on piano, and I sometimes joke around that every once in a while a song comes to me in a dream, and that's really where "Grow Old" was. It was I had this dream that I was in an audience and watching a rock band, and I was sort of fixated on the singer, who was an older man, and he was sort of floating above the stage, and he was playing a red violin and wearing a pink tutu. And but he was singing this one thing, "Grow Old," and that came in. That's the only thing I really remember from the dream, other than the description of the singer. And with that, I wrote this song called "Grow Old," and it goes over very well in the live shows.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Anyway, appreciate that. Very entertaining, very interesting. Anyway, Alan, do you have any future dream projects now that you haven't done yet, but you're thinking about doing it in the future?
Well, I mean, I think that for me, it's really all about continuing to meet and to interact with other talented musicians. I've talked to a bunch of the guys at Jim Blossoms a little about the creative process. There's it's hard to be in a backstage scenario with somebody who's a musician without jumping into that kind of thing. And I think for me, I just try to maintain an open mind, and would love to continue to work with great people, including my own band, who are some of the more talented people that I've ever encountered, and they're wonderful and they're giving. And so for me, the challenges are, how does one write the next song, and how does one write the next song in a way that doesn't feel like the past 5 songs, and how do you break new ground while keeping honest about who you are.
Okay, so you're thinking about the next big hit song that you're doing or album. You don't have any concrete exact projects in mind for a dream project that you haven't considered doing it yet?
Well, if Paul McCartney wants to write a song with me, I'm available. He can go to givinghermore.com and he can certainly find me. But no, I think I always liked Julian over at the band Neutral Milk Hotel, because he's this crazy multi-instrumentalist who will play a theremin, or he'll play a saw on songs, and it's dissonant, yet if you remove that sound from the song would stop being as interesting. And so a guy like that I'd love to work with. But there's such a long list of people that I'd love to work with that I feel like remiss by saying only mention a couple. So Julian and Paul McCartney.
I see. Anybody that you'd like to open up, you and your band, for, that you haven't yet, that you'd like to open up for?
Well, that's also a really long list.
It's a long
me,
list.
I'd love to play with Wilco. I think I love what Jeff has done, and I've been a big fan for a number of years. And anybody that can put 5,000 to 7,000 people in a room on a bad day is somebody I would love to open up for.
I see. Well, that's something to aspire to, that's for sure, Alan. Anyway, let me ask you, if people want to find out more about you, Alan, they want to reach out to you and find out more about you, how can they go about doing it? Can you tell me the various links where they can find? Yeah.
My last name is CHAPELL. You can find Chappelle Music on Facebook or Instagram or any of those things. But if you want to find me, go to givinghermore.com, because that has the links to everything, all my music, all my socials. And that's an easy one for people to get their head around. Givinghermore.com.
Givinghermore.com. Okay, I like that. That's how can you forget that? Givinghermore.com. So who are you giving to when you say giving her?
Well, so Giving Her More was a song I wrote a number of years ago for my daughter Kylie when she was 10 or 11. And so and I still play it because it's still one of my favorite songs. At least as a solo, I almost always play it. And so it has a special resonance for me.
Oh, I see. Okay. So that shouldn't be hard for people to remember. Okay.
Givinghermore.com.
Givinghermore.com. Got it.
All right.
Well, Chappelle, like I say, I've enjoyed talking to you and interviewing you. I really have.
Well, good. I've enjoyed chatting with you as well.
It's been an honor and a privilege. You're likable. You love what you're doing. You put passion into it, soul. You put your heart, mind, body, heart, soul into it. You realize you can't please everybody, but it doesn't matter because you're doing your own thing and you're loving what you're doing. And anybody can do that. That's success. And of course, you're also, doing your privacy lawyer, and you have a beautiful and wonderful family also. So you have a lot to be proud of. You've accomplished quite a bit.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure you're going to go ahead and do some other great things going forward.
Well, we'll see, but hopefully we just keep pushing forward, and I keep playing shows, and people keep coming out.
That's right. That's the idea. Okay, keep it going forward. Keep on blazing more trails and going forward on and having more fun and entertaining people and loving what you're doing. So, Alan Chappell, I want to thank you very much for being such a great, entertaining, and inspirational and fun guest on the Amazing Rich Johnny Blaze Show. Thank you for being on my show.
Well, Johnny Blaze, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You too, likewise. As we wrap it up here, Alan Chappell, I want to say for all my fans and friends, always keep a smile on your face and a song in your heart. Until next time, happy trails and blaze out.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to be a guest on an entertainment talk show, please send us an email to amazingoriginalJBshow@gmail.com. And remember, every one of our guests will receive a complimentary DVD of their appearance on the show. Every one of our shows gets at least 3,000 views on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the amazing, original Johnny Blaze. And now, the amazing, original Johnny Blaze has just left the building. Good night, and God bless. Thank you.